because I know most people start to, remember I don't like to use the word cheat. I've done this talk already that when you're changing your lifestyle, you can never really cheat because when you say cheat, you mean do what you used to do. And I'm trying to get you to do something different. So all you're really doing is you're busy changing over, or you're transitioning. So you never cheat, you transition. Some people transition more than others. Some people live in transition. Transition is security. It's like your mommy holding you in her arms. It's a beautiful place, and it involves ice cream. And it's funny how you never thought you craved anything until somebody took everything away. And how often I sit and I talk to people about, okay, I think we must stop your wheat. Oh, doctor, I hardly eat any wheat. I said, oh, well, then it should be easy for you. And then the next week, the conversation is completely different. Like, I don't know what to eat anymore. So have you found that already? Everything's so boring. And I'm not hungry. So the truth is, we often don't know what we are doing until it's gone completely. That's why we don't have a half measure thing. You see that we allow you to have a little fistful of jelly beans once a week. Did you read that in the list? No, because that's rubbish, isn't it? Now there's cheering and laughing. So the point is, if you give a human being a half measure, they are bound to push it. So remember when you used to be told you must eat 6 meals a day because it's good for your metabolism? So except that just gives you 6 times a day you can overeat. It was a brilliant system. And then because you couldn't actually make food 6 times a day, we had to give you shakes. We sell you shakes to eat for the meals in between. And entire industries have been developed around these shakes, which don't fit into our programs anymore, and they weren't ever really sustainable. And if you think about how many times you've been to a pharmacy to buy something off the shelf, how many times have you been back for that thing twice? Or 3 times. In fact, how many of you sit with one of those things half full in a cupboard now at home? No? Because you just you commit, and you're like really hoping for something because Dr. Oz said, or you read it in you, and it's some sort of a mango, and obviously mangoes are the best if they come from lands you never heard about. Those are the ones that fix everything, and then you can still eat it spur. But you are very disappointed shortly after to find out that is in fact not the truth again. And you're not as surprised as you thought you'd be, hey? Because what a surprise. So you've got to commit full on, but you're allowed to transition. Those people are rowdy because they're eating biscuits and bread. So shame. It's just a moment of silence. They're not. That is the sound of delusion, okay? When you go to these, you obviously haven't been to Stickland. Everyone's laughing there. It's not funny. Everyone's laughing. There's nobody even tells jokes anymore. They go knock, knock, and everyone just laughs because they can't remember the punchline. Anyway, so it is hot in here, I'm afraid I have to say. So we've sorted that out. Before I overeat. What did you hear? But you see how your brains are working. You're one-track mind now. It's just food. Food for thought. What did you hear? No, food for thought. So what I've done is I've changed the order around a little bit. Normally I speak about what foods you aren't allowed to eat. And the list that you thought was already very skimpy gets skimpier. So, in fact, how many of you have thought of just folding up that paper and just seeing what that tastes like? With some sauce that you're not allowed to have anymore. So we want you to change over to the proper diet program, the lifestyle thing that you're going to now do for the next part of the program, between 4 to 6 weeks. I'm going to give you the choice tonight to see what they each are. So I'm going to show you 3 of the current major diets, programs, lifestyle, eating options. Remember, I'm not trying to use the word diet, but it will slip out every now and again. That are sort of current in the world, that are effective, that are working well. And I'm explaining to you why they work and what the thinking and the science behind them is, as far as we need to know. So there's a lot of science that we don't need to know, that just complicates it. I'm trying to simplify it. I want to convince you just enough to give it a try. But I've got enough options so that everybody can, if they go, that really sounds crazy, there should be an option to suit everybody. So there's 3 options that we're going to teach you tonight, which you're going to start not necessarily in this week, but by next week, Tuesday, we will start this. So if you're still happy in your phase 1 and you think you're going for it, because the one thing you must admit is it kind of gets easier. No, in the beginning it was really hard. No, you're starting to say no to things a bit more easily. You've all had the experience of cake being passed around and you said, no, thank you. That doesn't last forever, I'm afraid. But you'll be surprised with some of these programs when they really do start to work, how easy it is to pass up on the cake. That's all I want to say. Good. So tonight's talk is a new world of eating. We've got a lot to do. And so let's see what's going on in the world we live in. This is the world you were all born into. This is a world where we were told how to eat. We were born into one of the first generations that was ever told how to eat by politicians. Not health people, not medical people, not nutrition people, but by politicians. Decisions were made based on economics, based on importing, exporting, based on fiscal policies, based on what could be provided, and general health trends that, as far as the politicians understood them. So the food pyramid we've grown up with has taught you to base your diet on carbohydrates, then to have fruit and vegetables, including a healthy dose of fruit juices, lots of fruits. Dairy was put in. Snack foods, meat, fish, eggs, beans, peas. This is where we make up our junk foods from. And right at the top, we put in very tiny amounts of chocolates, oils, fats. So we were told fat is bad, carbohydrate is good. We were not told that sugar is good or bad. We were told nothing. We were told sugar. Because sugar has no real harmful effects unless you're diabetic. If for everybody else, it's supposed to be fine. So we all grew up with your mom giving you a glass of orange juice for breakfast because that was a really healthy thing. We all grew up you giving your children yogurt because that was super healthy. Ice cream bad, yogurt healthy. Animal that it comes from, there's obviously cow, ice cream cows, and yogurt cows because those ones are healthier, happier. The other ones are unhappy. So, but somehow in our brain that got totally muddled, and we just thought that must be like that. But then to just really reinforce it, we made it low fat. Now we know it's healthy. No? So the best ice cream in the world is low fat ice cream from happy cows, which you don't get. But you will notice that if you look at your milk bottles, no milk bottle has a picture of cows standing in a row with their heads through a grate eating out of a bucket. No. It's always these happy cows running, dairy bell, tails like this, flowers, smiles, like bring it, ready to milk me. So these are happy cows. They don't really exist. So what I need to do is just an opportunity to make some stupid jokes. So at the moment, the Americans decided their thing was not working. So as early as 4 years ago, with a lot of influence from Michelle Obama, interestingly enough, who was nominated as the #1 most influential person in America in terms of health in the last, well, there was a poll that came out in 2014. So because she had a lot to do with this and teaching people to be active and healthy and to eat better. But in spite of everything we know and in spite of the trends of the world, they couldn't help themselves but put carbohydrates, grains, fruits, and dairy as though they're still essential. So we now know that there's nothing in dairy that you can't get from anywhere else. So dairy is not essential. The definition of essential means your body cannot make it or produce it, and you can't get it anywhere else. Essential. So you might have heard of essential fatty acids or essential oils. Essential oil means it's unique to that. You can't make it. There are essential amino acids. These are things that make proteins. I can't make it. A giraffe can make it. An elephant can make it. That's why he can live on a tree. But I can't make it, so I must eat an animal if I want to get it. It's essential. So they've decided that these things are essential, mostly because it's so hard for us to move away from this type of thinking, and because it does make sense. Remember the whole theory, we still all live by this. I believe that moderation, all things in moderation, doctor, okay? That's how we're going to be healthy, and that's how everybody's fat because they eat too much. And because they go too often to McDonald's or Kentucky, and because whatever reason. We need calcium from dairy because do you know that no other food contains calcium? Okay, that's entirely not true. But you were nervous for a second. Did you see that? It's like, ooh, my calcium. So no, calcium is in almost everything you eat. In fact, to get the calcium you need from milk, you'd probably have to drink about 5 liters a day. So good luck with that. So this is what the Americans currently are living with. I thought I'd throw in our very fancy one too. This is called what the hell? Just, I don't know, it's looking nice. So we have a little bit of a problem because we kind of have a third world environment where we have a lot of people who can't pay a lot of money for food. And so there are very practical components to a food so the pyramid thing, not so strong here. You got that. It's like the very, very Zimbabwe, South African, make it circle. So we've got vegetables and things, fruits, always important, obviously essential. Millipap made it in. Breakfast cereals in a box, made it in, recommended by our government and our nutrition and our dietary associations. Rice, essential. Macaroni, essential. Part of your daily diet. Beans, lentils, all these things, legumes and beans, very good. Dairy, of course, because without dairy we die. Fish, meat, very tiny. Now the idea of this picture is to sort of show you a proportion. So the big circle means lots of that. The big circle, lots of that. Small circle, again, not a lot of that. So it's very clear, don't you think? You'd look at this and go, oh, I get it. No, nobody yet so far. So fish, notice that the oils and the meats are really two tiny little circles. Big emphasis on the carbohydrates again. Equal emphasis on dairy and oils, a little bit more maybe. It's hard to tell unless you measure the circle. So if you're really a nervous eater, you'd have to have a ruler before you read this diagram. Fortunately, milk includes coffee, I think. So these are the diets we want to teach you a little bit about. Now the Mediterranean diet, now that's a scary diet because it's far too lekker to be right. And I'm going to explain that to you a little bit. The Paleo Diet, some of you may or may not have heard of. People call it the caveman diet. It's based on how we would have eaten if nothing had changed and we were all born 10,000 years ago. Banting diet, everybody's heard about the Banting. It's getting famous starting here, interestingly enough. And in spite of the fact that it's a national launch, to date, the most books have been sold in Cape Town. So Cape Town is heading the charge in Banting. Obviously it's because he's here, but it's just interesting that we are way, way ahead in terms of percentage adopting of this program compared to the other provinces in our country. So, because you think it's a national phenomenon, it's actually not as national as you think. It's a Cape Town phenomenon, Western Cape. Then we've got BetYaLife. That's me just pushing myself in there, trying to get a space. So the Paleo diet works a little bit like that. It's based on the original human diet 10,000 years ago. It's a hunter-gatherer thing. Men used to hunt. We used to eat what there was to be found at that time, in that season. We could only walk a certain distance to get food, so if it was in our region. So sometimes, to this day, we will talk about a regional diet, and there are parts of America that are supporting this kind of diet because essentially it's bringing money back into your local farming community. So it's a very sort of community-based thinking. Eat local foods, eat organic foods, eat free-range foods. Don't buy from big supermarket, buy from local farmer. So the principles of it are really nice. And there's a very happy farmer who invented this, who's selling lots of chickens now, because now nobody wants to buy them at wherever they buy them, Kmart or something. So it makes a lot of sense, because if you do look at how plants and things grow, there are seasons in which things are more abundant, and we can, if we now know, we can map minerals and nutrients in those plants where we know we benefit more from those at certain times. So it was natural for you to eat more fruits and vegetables during the summertime, and it was natural for you to hunt more and eat animals during wintertime when you needed more fat and more insulation. So it kind of worked for the hunters back then. It did mean that there were times, weeks, months, that they only ate, I don't know if they ate leaves. Do you think, can you see a caveman walking around and picking leaves off and thinking, oh, we just need a little bit more greens for the salad? Not really seeing that so much, while you're dragging your woman around by her hair, thinking, oh, I love a bit of salad. So I don't know that's such a strong thing. Obviously, fermentation is a little thing at the bottom here. Fermentation was discovered completely by accident, as you can imagine, because the husband forgot to put the stuff under the rock where it's cooler. And so then he left it out all night, and the next morning it was a little bit fruit, and then she tasted and thought, oh, this isn't so bad, let's leave it another 2 days. Then we made cheese. So fermentation completely by accident. They invented fermentation before fire, probably. This is the Paleo Diet pyramid. So we have a pyramid from the Paleos, and what you can see is there's a little turnaround in the emphasis of the Paleo. Now remember, it's hunter-gatherer. For large parts of the year, we would be dependent on what grew naturally and wild, no farming. So it's all the green stuff, essentially. There are root things involved here, but it's basically any plant material, vegetables, fruits, meat. But now when we talk meat and animal products, we are talking more wild game, venison types of things. So very low fat, actually. A very clean and healthy kind of a fat. And remember, the difference here is the oak didn't pop down to the Pick and Pay to get this. He had to hunt it down for 3 days. So if you are in the kind of belief of we need to burn the fuel that we consume, then you can understand why these people had they lost a lot of weight. I mean, you burn 3 kilograms for every 2 that you eat. Eventually, you just stop hunting and get fat. Fruits were very high, and I think that's just a natural thing of how humanity probably developed, is we would pick something that was there, sweet, tasty, available. I think it took us a while to dig something out of the ground. And if you think about it, there's a book called The Omnivore's Dilemma. And one of the dilemmas we have as omnivores means we can eat greens and we can eat meat. The dilemma we have is that we can eat anything. So how do you know when you can and when you can't? Who discovered that you can eat a frog? Who's the first guy that thought, that looks really tasty? I'm going to hack off its legs and just see. Who's the first oak that ate the chicken's egg? Because how many other things do you eat that passed out of the backside of an animal? Not so much. So there we have this little dilemma. We have the taste bud problem. We want something to taste nice. We want it to look nice. We are interested in expanding our sort of varieties that we eat. So people, millions must have died trying to find out what we can eat. And I think that probably back then the monkeys died. You know, there's the old rule, if a monkey can eat it, you can eat it. So fruit was big. We were attracted to sweetness. It makes sense. Sweetness was as attractive then as it is now, but it was all in a natural form of a fruit. The nuts and seeds thing, hard to say. I presume there were a lot of nut things, but there were a lot of our nut seeds, healthy fats and oils. When we talk about healthy fats and oils, we're talking about not farmed plant oils, not sunflower seeds. If there were sunflower seeds, I'm sure they used to eat them. There must have been sunflowers, but we didn't have fields of them. There wasn't canola oil. There wasn't all these different oils you can buy, plant oils. But there probably wasn't even olive oil, although that was available from quite long ago. So we like our oils. We like avocado oils. There is, in fact, you can get something called pine nut oils. People have discovered oils from all sorts of different plants. And people have been using the oil from fish, actually, interestingly enough, for a very long time. There's an Eskimo group. I forget the name of the fish now. But salmon. No, it's not salmon. It's like a kapenta. You get a kapenta, as a Zimbabwean little fish. It's like that. It's a tiny, tiny little fish, but it's a very oily fish. And they found out very long ago that they can catch these in great numbers and dry them. And they use the oil to cook, and they use them to snack, a bit like a biltongi kind of a fish. Bochum. So, bochum, the only word that works and spits at the same time. So, herbs and spices. This is the other thing where you just basically can do flavoring of foods using natural herbs and things which are found around you. So this is the Paleo Diet. It's a very clean diet. Notice the 2 huge things missing here. No dairy. No grains. No breads. No wheats of any type. No legumes. So I'm sure they were there, but it would depend on where you lived. And unless you had the inclination to plant a patch of it, you ate what you found and moved on. These people were nomadic, more than likely. They didn't farm. So it's a tough diet, but it's a clean diet. This is my favorite diet for somebody. This is just kind of what it's about, berries and fruit. I just want to get to this thing. This is my favorite diet for people who have illnesses relating to their gut, where there's something wrong with the food that you eat and you don't know what it is and I don't know what it is. Because it takes food back to a very clean state. Whole foods, raw foods very often, very low in salt, very low in sugar, except for fruit, which is the only area that if there's going to be any question, it would be in that region. Very nice food. So you've got your healthy fats. There's a list. So you guys should be getting these slides. Are you getting them already? Okay. So you can go and look at these again if you want to, just to see all the things that are summarized in these little blocks. But there's all your stuff, the local stuff, the meat, fish, fowl, and eggs, healthy fats. These are the top things. Now, somehow herbs have been used for medicine since before time. People have known that certain herbs have medicinal qualities. Dark chocolate was obviously all over the place, as you can imagine. Lint was a very well-known guy that lived in a cave a little bit down. It could be true. Uncle Lint, as they used to call him. Yeah. Red wine, interesting. Again, the man forgot to put the grape juice away. And then, what do you know? Ooh, that tastes fruit, but it's really nice. Wonder what the Shiraz is like. So the omega oils are what we were getting from our fish at the time. And a lot of the development of our species to become an intelligent species, if you feel like you want to believe in evolution, started because of this type of eating. Antioxidant rich. In other words, we used to take medicines without even knowing it. We're starting to heal and help our body to heal and recover from disease, illness, and even from the results of other food that we used to eat. All right, let's move on to another little diet, fondly known as the Mediterranean diet. I start with a map because I sometimes ask, if you don't mind pointing out which part of the Mediterranean the diet exactly comes from. Because I'm sure the people in Egypt don't really eat like the people in Italy, who don't eat like the people in Spain, who don't eat like the people in Israel, or the Turkeys, or the Greeks. Now, I've been to these places, and they are similar, but they're all very different. So some of them have huge amounts of meat. If you go to Israel, you can have breakfast that looks like a buffet at any restaurant you've ever been to. There's salads, and there's fruits, and there's vegetables, and there's meats, and there's fish, and maybe there's eggs and toast, because they have European visitors coming over. They're not really interested in that kind of thing. You can go to places further up here where they hardly eat meat at all. They eat lentils, they eat chickpeas, they eat falafel and shawarmas and things that are made of vegetable products, tons of them. Obviously a lot of fishing. Wherever you go, there's fish. But surprisingly in Greece, a lot of red meat. So the Mediterranean diet doesn't actually, in fact, exist. We made it up. So this is where my job gets easy. So I made up a new one. And nobody can ever say I'm wrong. That's what's so awesome about the Mediterranean diet. Because I just obviously name it after an island or something I went to. All right, so the Mediterranean diet includes a very coarse form of wheat. Now, it's very important for me to make this distinction. It's not Albany, stay fresh for 3 years white. Okay? This bread, you have to eat it on the day you bake it, because the next day you use it to keep the door open when the wind blows. By day 3, you can actually kill people with this bread. Pasta, interestingly enough, has become something that they've eaten more of. It wasn't always a traditional food. And pasta, we always think pasta Italy. There's rumors that the Italians didn't even invent pasta. So, in fact, it comes from China, if you want to really get into the history. Nobody cares. But the Chinese now use noodles to eat their rice, long noodles, I suppose. I don't know how they started, but, you know, they look at so that became their knives and forks, and the Italians ate the pasta. So a lot of fruits, naturally occurring tropical fruits. This is a warm climate, so they are picking a lot of things just off the trees. Lots of vegetables, a lot of oils, a lot of cheese, a lot of fish. So all the way up. And the thing that they're consuming probably the least is meat. Interestingly enough, red meat. Specifically beef. And I suppose if you think about it, Mediterranean, you're talking about hilly countryside, you're talking about fishing villages, maybe farming with cattle wasn't the thing. So a lot of these things just develop naturally over time. But that's the Mediterranean diet. Notice on the side, wine in moderation. Normally, actually, probably most of you didn't notice this part. Then you see wine in moderation, and you've chosen your diet. Is that because I've been doing this a long time. So here's the deal. You can have wine in moderation if you have your main meal at lunchtime and you have a 2-hour siesta after you have lunch and you eat with at least 8 people and you walk to work afterwards. Anybody still up for the Mediterranean diet? Not so much. Because this is what we have to think about when we talk about diets, is it was more than just food. It was a culture. And you have to incorporate many aspects of that culture if you really want the diet to work for you. It's not about just picking the stuff that tastes nice or looks nice. These people visit and they have food. We have food and we visit. When we think about Christmas, what do we start planning 3 months before Christmas? Who's bringing the turkey? Who's bringing the chicken? Who's bringing the gammon? We talk about food. And then on the day before Christmas, we go and shop for presents. And we've incorporated the two, so normally my wife gives me a nice gammon. It's really very practical. Okay, let's talk about this guy. So, have you heard of Banting? Yes, you have. So, why have you heard about Banting? Because Tim Noakes made him up. So, I don't know how many of you know that Banting was actually a person. Is there anybody who doesn't know that yet, just for interest's sake? Anybody? Didn't know that? Didn't know that? Cool. So, thank you. That's why I want to keep the slide here. People don't know where the name actually comes from. So, this man was a fat guy, and he lived... I don't think that's actually a picture of Banting. This is a picture of his doctor. I'm showing you him now. In 1861, he went to his doctor, and he's been overweight, and he could not lose weight. He was one of very few fat people at the time. And his doctor said, I honestly don't know anymore what to tell you. Why don't you just stop eating anything that's not from an animal? Just eat, I think the conversation went more like this. Doc, I'll do anything, just don't take my meat away. And the doctor said, this is a good idea. Stop everything and carry on eating meat. And without knowing it, he discovered something. He discovered something science was not brave enough to say. He discovered that you do not need carbohydrates to survive. You do not need dairy, in spite of what Mrs. Obama says. You do not need fruit and vegetables. You can survive on meat, which we still won't say. So I have a lot of my patients and a lot of people who've done BetYaLife in the past will do my program, and then we all make the same mistake. We do the program, we lose lots of weight, and then we start eating bread again, and we start eating fruit again, and we start eating lots of mixed vegetables like vegetables make no difference. And we all put the weight back on again. And it's amazing to me. I have patients who go on a high-fat type of a diet, which is Banting, lose weight, come off their insulin, come off their blood pressure tablets, go to their specialist, and he says, this is crazy. This diet's terrible for you. It's dangerous. It can damage your kidneys. Start eating oats for breakfast and have Provitas with cheese. And it doesn't take long. And the guy's back on his blood pressure medicine, back on his insulin. And nobody ever connects the dots. So how can it be? There's one of my favorite cartoons is a little man who stands in his office. He says, two guys talking in an office. I'm going out for a smoke. Okay, see you in 10 minutes. Next caption. I'm going out tonight for a party. We're going to drink till we froth. Yes, you have a jaw, my buddy. Next caption. I'm going out, going to find me a woman or 3. We're going to give it a go. If we're lucky, we drink afterwards. Ah, awesome. I wish I was invited. 4th caption. I'm thinking of starting the Banting diet. No, are you crazy? That's so dangerous. That can kill you. Have you heard about your kidneys? And what if you don't have fruits and vegetables? Suddenly, we're all the health specialists and we all really care, but we're going to die if you do that, and yet all the other stuff we just seem to ignore. And doctors as well. Does your doctor motivate you enough because you smoke? No, we'll say it in passing because I don't want to be rude. But so it's interesting how we get really caught up and emotional about food. How many of you have not had a conversation around the table about whether Banting makes sense? Is Tim Noakes just a joke from the past? Is he here to haunt us for the future? Every single one of us in this room has had this conversation. So this guy wrote a letter to the government called the Letter of Corpulence, I believe, in 1861. So guess what? Tim Noakes wasn't born. Well, it's a little bit before. So around that time, Tim was born. And he liked this diet. So the reason Tim has called this the Banting diet is because Banting was mentioned in a book written by a guy called Gary Taubes called the The Diet Delusion, which is an awesome, awesome book if you really have got nothing to do for about a year. So it's unbelievable the detail that this man has put into this book, describing the very beginning almost of eating, from like almost when you're thinking about food. Now, I mean time. Okay, so just like, so he wrote down the history of Banting, and Tim Noakes read this book, and he really sort of thought, well, this is where it all started. And that's how he decided to name his diet after this guy, William Banting. This is another guy in the 70s who made this famous, called Atkins. Now, he, interestingly enough, died of a heart attack. Do you know that? No, it's not true. So interestingly enough, he did have a heart problem, he did have high blood pressure, and he did have a heart attack, which he survived. Very important, because some people stop the story at the point that suits them. He lived a very good life, survived his heart attack, and died a few years later, slipping on ice and cracking his skull, unfortunately. So he really, really did well. He lived this life for about 30 years. He had a massive effect in the world. He sold hundreds of thousands of books, and he really started a revolution, and died probably just didn't live long enough to see it become normal or acceptable. And it wasn't long before doctors were putting their patients back on bread and back on potatoes and back on, because obviously you're supposed to have that, because the pyramid says. So this is the food pyramid that Banting recommends for you. So Banting wants, unfortunately, this picture, I'm not sure I like this picture a lot, because it implies that you can eat as much meat as you like. The truth is, a Banting diet is not about meat only. It's about fat. The reason is that fat is made up of something which is a very complex form of sugar, whereas meat primarily is a mixture of protein and fat, each in differing amounts. So an interesting example is like a piece of lamb chop that you would eat. If you cut the fat off the lamb, then what's left of the meat, a lot of people won't know, about 22 grams per 100 grams of your lamb is protein, and about 27 grams per 100 is fat. So you don't realize it, but the lamb chop that you're eating that's so juicy has got more fat in it than it's got protein. So there are certain meats that are better and worse. Now, I know ostrich has become a bit more popular because it's such a clean meat and say it's low-fat meat. Now we hate ostriches again. We want their feathers for other reasons we don't understand. So there's a bit of a trend away from the low-fat meats back to the high-fat meats. So that's where Paleo and Banting really clash, because Paleo wants clean meat, wild, game, unfarmed, pasture-raised, and Banting says, nee, bring die vet. Ons wil eet. Ons wil gly in ons vette. Ons wil rol. One of the biggest things that the guys have looked at and proved to some extent convincingly, and unfortunately to some extent only, not entirely, but they've proven that when the body has the right amount of fat and the right amount of protein, which is quite a little, less than 20% of your diet, that your body manages the food completely differently, and it starts to burn the fat. So have you guys heard of something called ketosis or ketogenesis, ketogenic diet? Your body stops burning sugar and it starts burning something called ketones, which is made from the fat. So it's not a protein diet. And that's where a lot of people make the mistake with Banting, is they stop eating bread and potatoes, and they stop eating rice, and they stop eating millies, and they start eating meat. So that's our first mistake. It's not a meat diet. It's a fat diet. So your fats, your cleanest fats are coming from your coconut oil. Coconut is probably your cleanest fat there is, 100% fat. Then your plant oils, your avos, your olives are very high in fat. Your egg is an awesome all-rounder. Eggs fit across the board. Paleos, Bantings, Mediterraneans, we're all loving the eggs. So we want fat because we want our bodies to learn to use fat so that when it runs out of the food we've eaten, it carries on burning fat, but from us, instead of waiting for more sugar. Remember last week I said to you, your body will eat the food you've trained it to eat. So if it's waiting for more sugar, it will just eat more sugar. And it will be hungry until you give it sugar, and it will not burn fat. So all the times that you think when I'm hungry I'm losing weight, it's probably not true. You're probably just getting sick, and your body starts breaking down proteins rather than fats. Okay. So the Banting diet, Banting Atkins Noakes diet, involves fatty foods. So the skin of the chicken is probably better for you than the meat of the chicken. The thigh of the chicken is probably better for you than the breast of the chicken. So what we always, again, completely opposite of what you used to think. You used to think tuna is a good fish, but probably your best fish is like a sardine, a mackerel, oily fish. The difference I want to just tell you then, Banting and Paleo. If you want to break it down, the Banting diet comes down to this. 80% of your diet is based on fat, up to 80%. 20% or less is protein, and 10% or less is carbohydrate. A paleo diet puts the ratios out a little bit. 30% of your diet can be carbohydrates. 30% of your diet can be proteins. 30 to 40% can be your fats. So it's a lower fat diet. It's not a low fat diet. The diet you've been told to eat your whole life is 10% fat, 10 to 20% protein, and 60% carbohydrate. So it's flipping it completely on its head. So the way if you want to just choose between them, the Banting is the highest fat, the Paleo is the highest protein, and the Mediterranean is the highest carb. In terms of sustainability, the easiest and the most social diet is the Mediterranean. In terms of health, the cleanest diet is the Paleo. In terms of satisfaction, easy to eat, low hunger, good for my diabetics, the Banting is the diet that's going to be the one for you. Now, it's important for you to hear that distinction because I want you tonight to decide which one you want to try, except for one small problem. I don't want you to do the Mediterranean yet, so there's one more diet option to come. What else did I have to say about Banting? Oh, just one thing about Banting, just to make it easy, they've divided this up into a green, a orange, and a red list of foods. So it's very easy to follow. Nobody tells you how much you can eat. Nobody tells you when you can eat. Basically, you have 3 options, green, orange, red. You can eat as much green as you like. You can eat the orange if you have to, and you eat the red, never. That, gone, forever. It's the easy one to remember. So we will give you these lists. I'll give you a green list, I'll give you an orange list, and I'll give you a red list. It's that easy. The Paleo is pretty much as easy as that. If you could find it 10,000 years ago, you can have it. So good luck at Pick and Pay. Although there's a very old one in Brackenfell, but I'm just not quite. The BetYaLife Diet was a modification of a diet called the Hay Diet, which was designed after there was a book called Fit for Life, which introduced for the very first time a thing called food hygiene, where they saw that when you eat your food separately, so in other words, you separate your protein and your fats from your carbohydrates, that your body absorbs it better, digests it differently. So we know when we put all the foods together in a big pile and eat them, food can spend easily 8 hours in our stomachs digesting. Very dependent on a healthy system, very dependent on good acid production, very dependent on good pancreas function, very dependent on good insulin function. Long time. A lot of people with heartburn, it's because your stomach just doesn't empty fast enough because of the amount of time food spends in your stomach. So they went and looked at how long does it take for food to get through your system. So water takes a couple of minutes. Fruits, up 20 minutes. Carbohydrates, an hour to 2 hours, depending on how well you chew it, how well it's cooked. Proteins, 3 to 4 hours. So quite long. Fats, 3 to 4 hours. But as soon as you mix them, 6 to 8 hours. So a lot of people who wake up in the morning say, Doc, I'm never hungry in the morning when I wake up. It's because when you went to sleep, your stomach stopped passing food out or slowed it down. So when you wake up, you still got food from last night in your stomach. And so that's why you're getting your heartburn. So the Banting, these diets, the Hay Diet, the Fit for Life Diet, and then later on, they got to be known as food combining diets, where you started to be specific about what did you eat with or without. The other thing that in the BetYaLife Diet, they discuss, my diet, it's not mine, I adopted it, is that fruit has a separate place of its own. So you can eat fruit, but you never eat fruit with other food. Fruit is always eaten between meals or on its own, preferably on its own. The idea was that fruit has a lot of sugar in it and primarily ferments rather than digests. And the best way to get fruit through your system is to eat it on its own so it can pass through your system and be digested. But as soon as fruit is delayed in its passing through of your system, it actually starts to ferment, so it makes gas. So you can try this experiment with beans if you like. So everybody knows beans make you gassy. But if you eat beans on their own, the effect is reduced because of the time spent going through your system. So the quicker it goes through, the less gas, the less fermenting. So a lot of people with irritable bowel syndromes, a lot of people with heartburn, reflux, you do well on this food combining diet. So this is the diet. This is an easy one. You can eat almost anything you're eating at the moment. All the carbohydrates can be included. So this is for somebody who really just says, you know, Doc, I've been eating oats all my life. I'm not ready to give that up because Tim Noakes said I must give it up. Okay? I like potatoes. I want lasagna. Good luck with the lasagna. But most of the foods, you can separate the fats and proteins from the carbs. So think about how you've been eating the last 2 weeks. Instead of having eggs on toast, you're just having the eggs with some bacon. Now I'm giving you the opportunity to, at another meal, to just have the bread, to have the toast. Even if you want, maybe put a bit of jam on it. But I didn't say that. Because it's a carbohydrate, and the jam is a carbohydrate too. It's a very high sugar carbohydrate. But in this type of program, we don't fight sugar. We don't fight the carb. Now, I don't know if I still believe in this. That's the real truth. So this is the one I give to the people who just say, Doc, I just don't think I can commit to these other programs. I'm not ready for this big transition to the new world of thinking. I want to have my carbohydrates. Then I'm going to ask you to do just this one small change. Separate them. Eat them separately. Have rice with stir-fried vegetables. Have meat with salads. Have egg with bacon. Have fruit on its own. Drink water. So it's not a cop-out diet. It's a transition diet. Because if it works, what you'll find naturally starting to happen is you start to eat more and more foods that are fats or proteins and less foods that are carbohydrates, because you will notice that you don't feel bloated. Isn't that one of the first things you've noticed in the first 2 or 3 weeks? You don't feel bloated. You don't feel swollen. You don't feel puffy. You might even have started to see you sleeping better. You might see that your heartburn is already better. You might notice that you're breathing better. So how many people have noticed that even your allergies that were, actually your nose is clearer. When you come off dairy, your nose clears up. So your body's not fighting food all day and all night. It's actually got a chance in between meals to heal. So when you sleep at night, your body recovers rather than just fights for survival. So when you wake up in the morning, you actually feel better. Now, eating better is not the only solution to sleeping better, but it certainly is a huge, huge part of it. So I'm hoping you're starting to see those things. I want all those forms of yours, please. If you didn't have it last week, then have we checked how many of those we've got? I need your forms, your evaluation forms, please. I like to look through them too, so I don't mind if they're anonymous. We'll give them back to you next week. So that'll be cute though. It's kind of a random thing. So I'd just like to see what people are struggling with. And then we'll give them back to you at 6 weeks and then again at 12 weeks so that you can start to see how these things are changing. It's important to see. So these are the things we're still going to learn about. So don't give up. It's not all about food. We're still going to talk about your body. We're going to talk about what foods you should be eating and shouldn't be eating. We're going to talk about how your body is supposed to heal. What exercise are you supposed to do? Remember, I haven't told you to exercise yet. I don't want you to exercise yet. I want your body to learn to lose weight doing nothing. Later on, we're going to introduce exercise to energize your systems, but not to lose weight. We still have to talk about diseases that affect your weight. Some of you that are here 2-3 weeks in, you're giving it your all and you're putting on weight. You're feeling bloated. You're not getting any of these results that we're talking about. We have to talk to you separately, different conversation. The food intolerance conversation becomes very important for a lot of people. So these are all the things that are still coming up. We're going to talk about sleep. We're going to talk about stress, nutritional education. The reason I've got this list up here is because I just want to show you that there are still all these things that prevent you from being fully healthy. Changing your diet alone does not fix everything. But I'll tell you what, my experience is that it's amazing how much it does fix. And I'm hoping you will start to see that. So your homework for this week is to decide which of those diets you're going to do. On the table, as you leave, will be 3 forms. On the forms, I want you to write your name under the diet that you think you're going to try. So the BetYaLife is the food combining, separating. So don't worry about the details yet. That will be sent to you or handed to you. But based on what I've told you tonight, I want you to decide, what am I up for? What am I keen for? What do I feel I can commit to? I can help you. The BetYaLife diet is the easiest diet. The Paleo diet is the hardest diet, but it is the cleanest diet. The Banting diet feels wrong all the time, but it's nice. Okay? You choose your one. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide you up into groups according to who's chosen which diets, and I'm going to group you with other people that are doing your diet. And you guys are going to form a little Facebook group and start interacting with each other. And I like to start a little bit of a credibility thing. Accountability. So I'm going to start asking for a bit of a commitment to be at the meetings every week. And if you can't be here, to interact with the other members of your group, to just say, I'm sorry, can't be there, not going to make it. But I want you to be able to start sharing recipes that you find. We will post email in this week. I'm going to try and send you an email that will give you ideas of where you find recipes and things to do. There are hundreds and millions. The internet has made my job super easy. Because if you can't find a diet or a recipe, not a diet, if you can't find a recipe on the internet, then your internet is broken. There's your 3 papers. Decide what you want to do. Write your name under the one you want to do. We're going to contact you in the week. We're going to tell you which group you're in. We're going to share your email or cell phone number with the other members of your group. We will nominate a leader of each group. That's just, you don't have to do anything. It's just for communication. So that I've got one person from each group that I can just send a message to, and that person will send. So we will allow you the opportunity to do all of that. Decide what you want to do. Give it horns. You can keep doing your phase 1 for this week, but if you're tired of it, you can start to switch over to the Banting and Paleos. We will email you all the information. If you want a hard copy of it, you can ask my ladies to get that for you. I will print it out for you. But I would prefer to email everybody everything that they need. So each of you will get a Banting, a Paleo, a BetYaLife description with exact instructions of what you need to do. Mediterranean, sadly, we will save for the end of the course. So my experience with Mediterranean is it's a fantastic lifestyle diet, but it's not a fantastic weight loss diet. That, however, is contrary to the international opinion. Many people that you read or listen to will tell you the Mediterranean is one of the best diets. But the reason the Mediterranean is popular is because it comes from an era where we thought cholesterol kills you, where we thought fat is bad. And Ansel Keys, who decided that we must have our cholesterol lowered, did a lot of studying in the Mediterranean, and he proposed this diet right back in 1967. So it's an old diet, but it is a good diet. It has a lot of merit, and a lot of people do very well on it, but we will do that towards the end. So your 3 choices are Paleo, Banting, BetYaLife. That's all I'm going to say for now. We'll see you next week here, 6 o'clock. Make up your minds. Ding, ding, ding. Should I get to like a ticking clock? Write it down on your way out, and we're going to be in touch with you in this week. Thank you very much for being here tonight and enjoying the warmth with us.